I'm Emily Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. Coming up, Twitter COO Anthony Noto makes his exit, why the man crucial to the company's turnaround efforts took the top job at SoFi. Plus, Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi plans to put the ride-hailing giant on the road to profitability. Highlights from his conversation with Bloomberg from Davos. And Amazon Go is open for business. We open the doors for an inside look at the tech giant's brick-and-mortar convenience store. But first to our lead. A huge shakeup for the leadership team at Twitter. COO Anthony Noto has resigned from the company to take the CEO position at the fintech startup Social Finance, or SoFi. Noto joined Twitter in 2014 as chief financial officer after previously working at Goldman Sachs and has played a leading role at the company. And he has his work cut out for him at SoFi when he takes over in March. Noto will fill a leadership void that's existed since co-founder Mike Cagney resigned as CEO last year amid accusations of sexual harassment. We got all the details from Bloomberg News tech reporters Selena Wang and Julie Verhage.
This certainly delivers a blow to Twitter, especially just at the very early innings of their turnaround strategy. Since the past few months, several analysts have upgraded the company. They're finally starting to show some revenue and user growth. Now, that being said, Noto did put in place much of the structures that they needed to continue this turnaround, including the live streaming, the content strategy, and really paring back some of the other parts of the business to focus on user engagement. Some sources have also said that this could provide a good opportunity for Jack, since him and Noto haven't always agreed on product vision. And this may be an interesting way for Jack to pursue some other paths that hadn't been possible with Noto right there.
Interesting. Jack Dorsey did tweet, "I'm really sad to see Anthony Noto leave us, but I'm happy for him and really proud of everything he's accomplished at Twitter. He's been a friend, partner, and mentor to me for years. He always has my support and gratitude. Thank you, Anthony. We love you." There was plenty of Twitter commentary about all of this. One of my favorites was, now Twitter has 3 interns and a part-time CEO. I mean, let's talk about the real logistics here of the fact that, they're not refilling this position and what that means.
Certainly. I mean, I just got off the phone with a source. It's not clear for sure that they won't fill the position. I mean, there's a few steps that they're going to take. First of all, they're going to assess, do they keep the current organizational structure they have now that was reporting up to Noto? It had been Jack was really in charge of the engineering, the consumer part. Noto is in charge of the business structure. Do they want to change that? And if so, do they want to either promote someone to fill that role, or do they want to hire someone from outside? But as of now, of course, they're going to try to disperse that and have their top rank sort of fill in the position that Noto is now leaving. Matthew Dorello will certainly play a large role in that. He leads global ad sales. He has a link to Wall Street, so he'll be the immediate person to fill it in. But you're absolutely right. We have a dual CEO at this company, and without a COO, it certainly presents a problem.
Julie, by all accounts, this seems to be a win for SoFi. What's the word that you're getting from the company?
I think it is a big boom to their business, right? And in many aspects, as Selena is explaining Twitter, I view SoFi as sort of a different thing. It's always been like this darling of fintech and has always done very well. But 2017 wasn't that great of a year in that now all the co-founders are gone. They lost their CFO, their chief revenue officer, and now they finally have some clarity, bringing some leadership in, and a big name nonetheless too, someone that brings together a good balance of finance and technology that should be good to get SoFi sort of back on track, start answering some questions that a lot of people at the company have too, and sort of, what the direction of this firm is. There were years ago where Cagney said, IPO is on the horizon for, 2016, I think was the original timeline, and we're already in 2018, so sort of where all of that stands now.
I can only imagine that the culture there has been somewhat beaten down by all of these sexual harassment allegations, which didn't just surface with Mike Cagney, but other executives as well.
Right.
How would you describe the culture at the company right now, the sentiment among employees?
Right. I think right now people are still sort of, want to wait and see what Anthony actually brings in, but they are glad to have an adult, so to say, in the room once again, have a leader, someone to sort of look to, because before it was a lot where, there was no one to sort of say, all right, this is our strategy right now, this is where we're going. Everyone was in wait and see mode for a really long time.
Selena, Twitter's about to report earnings, and the company has been improving when you look at the numbers. What are we expecting? Is Anthony Noto leaving on a high note, essentially?
I think that's a really great way to put it. He has put in place a lot of the fundamentals. He planted the seeds, and now they're ready to bloom. And that's a very opportune time for him to leave. The expectations are good. The analysts I've spoken to don't think that him leaving is going to fundamentally change the thesis about the company, which is that while for a long time Twitter was actually shrinking, they've actually stopped that shrinkage and are slowly starting to grow. One of the metrics that's looked very positive is the daily active user growth. While they don't report the base number, the growth rate has been looking very positive in terms of the users coming to the platform, their time they're spending on the platform. And a lot of that also, let's not forget, should be credited to Jack as well, since he's the one spearheading a lot of the actual user interface and product updates, like the algorithmic timeline and the notification changes, the Explore tab changes. So it definitely has been a team effort between Jack and Anthony, and him leaving is not going to change that.
That was Bloomberg's Selena Wang and Julie Verhage. And Bloomberg LP, I should say, operates a global breaking news network on Twitter called TikTok. Well, in the biggest blow to the renewable energy industry yet, President Trump decided on Monday to slap tariffs on imported solar panels. The U.S. will impose duties of as much as 30% on solar equipment made abroad. It's a move that threatens to handicap a $28 billion industry that relies on parts made abroad for 80% of its supply. The Solar Energy Industries Association has projected tens of thousands of job losses in a sector that employed 260,000. Coming up, Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi speaks to Bloomberg TV from Davos, saying the ride-hailer aims to be profitable within 3 years. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Google CEO Sundar Pichai is open to paying more in corporate taxes. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Pichai explained that the more important question was where Google should pay. The company's current blended global tax rate is 20%. Critics have accused large U.S. technology companies like Google of paying too little tax outside the U.S., despite deriving a large portion of their revenue from these other countries. Well, one of the biggest startups on the planet is turning a corner when it comes to profitability. This, according to Chief Executive Officer Dara Khosrowshahi of Uber. Bending the company's financial trajectory out of the red would be a dramatic shift for the global ride-hailing service, which has been losing billions of dollars a year. Our Bloomberg editor-in-chief, John Micklethwait, spoke to Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi from a Bloomberg Live event at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Take a listen.
The core business, the ride-sharing business, can be profitable within 3 years. We will continue to make very aggressive investments in building out autonomy because we think that's a terrific opportunity for building out new technologies such as Uber Elevate, where near-term profitability is not a goal, but long-term growth is. So we will look to balance near-term profitability, but as a company, we will always be a company that makes big, bold bets and takes big risks.
To what extent, though, do you think that drive to become profitable fights against a little bit of this culture change? If you want to make, you talked about making money, but not at all costs. Do those two things?
Well, I don't think that profitability and culture are their issue. The company in the past was willing to make trade-offs as it related to how it did business, and I think was guilty of hubris, was guilty of thinking that they knew better than others, and I think that what we know now clearly is that breakneck growth can hide cultural issues, that there are no excuses for not doing the right thing, and that you do have to make trade-offs. And as a management team, we're specifically talking about those trade-offs that you have to make. We have to be a little more patient sometimes, because working with governments, regulators, et cetera, sometimes takes longer, but in the end, you build a more lasting business. And so maybe what we went through was necessary, but we're here. We can control our actions from this moment onwards, and I think everyone at Uber from this moment onwards wants to build a great company, not only in terms of growth, but in terms of the kind of company anyone would want to work at.
Can I ask you one thing which you have got as sort of hangover from last year, which is all the regulatory problems, and particularly all the cases against you? I think there are 6 criminal probes or whatever going on.
The lawyers are lining up outside the door.
Which one do you sort of think? Which one do you fear most? I suppose, out of different things.
Listen, I think that all of them are serious issues, and my response is that we're going to be transparent, and we're going to take responsibility for our actions in the past. I do think that there are certain circumstances where there was smoke but no fire. And I think as a company, we have to defend ourselves and work within kind of the appropriate frameworks. And my goal is just to get beyond this stuff.
Some of these things like pricing policies, surely they go right to the heart of what Uber is, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, I think they do, but I think that there's a way of being smart but transparent at the same time, and that's where we've got to take the company.
And we continued with Dara Khosrowshahi from Davos. He discussed the future of his industry, like autonomous cars, and how technology will help bring changes to the road.
We think there are 3 keys to transport and where the industry is going: autonomous, electric, and shared. And I think all 3 are necessary in order to get to the next level of city planning, et cetera. There are many cities where up to a fifth of the space taken in these cities is taken by parking and storing these cars. And so I do think that you need autonomous, you need electric, and you need shared. And I do think it's going to take some time. True autonomy for every single use case is some ways away. What we bring to bear is our developing autonomy, and we will have autonomous cars on the road, I believe, within the next 18 months, not as a kind of a test case, but as a real case out there. And over a period of time, we're going to bring autonomous transportation and feather it in with the non-autonomous transportation with drivers.
What does feathering in mean?
Feathering in
means to a layman like me?
Crashing. Yeah, feathering in means if you're, for example, in Phoenix, and you make a request to go from A to B, which is what you do with Uber. There will be 95% of cases where we may not have everything mapped perfectly, or the weather may not be the right weather, or there may be an accident on the road, or you may not have 2 or 3 ways of getting from A to B, where you may say, you know what, that's not an autonomous use case. We're going to send a driver to pick that person up. For 5% of cases, everything is going to fall into place. And we will send an autonomous car. The user will be able to pick, do you want there's an autonomous car, yes or no, and we'll be able to service that A for B. That 5% is going to go to 10 and 15 and 20 as our computers and our algorithms learn more and more about what it takes to drive in a city in a real life situation. And every minute of every day, that driver, that computer, is going to get better and know Phoenix better and better and better. And in 5 years, we'll have the perfect driver in Phoenix. We will have to retrain that driver in every single city. We're going to have to build out 3D maps of these cities. And it will take time, but over a period of time, you essentially have a driver who becomes the perfect driver. It'll take 10 to 15 years, but that's the feathering in that I'm talking about.
And will a child born today, will they ever need to learn how to drive?
A child born today? No, I don't think so.
That was Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi speaking to Bloomberg in Davos. Well, it's an all-or-nothing pay package for the billionaire founder and CEO of Tesla Motors. Tesla has granted Elon Musk a largest of its kind $2.6 billion stock award. If fully vested over a decade, stock options could make him almost $55 billion. In return, Musk has agreed not to get salary or bonus. It appears to be Tesla's way of ensuring Musk will stay. Coming up, Amazon at it again, further disrupting the brick-and-mortar industry by introducing cashierless convenience stores. We'll head to Seattle and Amazon Go next. And Intel reported earnings this week, the company's first since the Spectre and Meltdown chip flaws were revealed. We will take a closer look at the impact of this to its bottom line. This is Bloomberg. Just last week, Amazon announced a $2 a month increase for Prime monthly members. According to Cowen & Company, the spike in price will generate an extra $300 million annually for Amazon. Cowen estimates that 30% of Amazon's 60 million Prime subscribers in the U.S. pay monthly based on its surveys of Amazon shoppers. Cowen estimated the $300 million given its analysis of the monthly customers, including students and low-income users who pay a lower rate. And Amazon is making a play for the struggling $550 billion U.S. convenience store industry, unveiling Amazon Go to the public in downtown Seattle this week. The store lets shoppers grab what they want and leave without paying a cashier. We went live to Seattle from the brand new store and spoke with Bloomberg Tech's Spencer Soper.
Well, we've been here since about lunchtime, and at lunchtime the line was around the corner, so there's definitely a lot of excitement. It's died down a little bit as the afternoon's worn on. But basically, this is a store where you walk in, you have an app on your smartphone, you get a QR code, you scan it, that opens a glass turnstile, and then you can walk in. Once you're inside, you pick from sandwiches, salads, even meal kits, drinks, a lot of traditional convenience store staples like milk, bread, and eggs. And everything is built to you automatically. There's no cashier. You just walk out. So they're trying to make that checkout counter logjam a thing of history.
So how well staffed is this store? I mean, are there security guards? Are there clerks to help? Are there folks there to prevent theft and the like?
Theft is not an issue. Today, there's a lot of Amazon people on board. They've even got part of the sidewalk cordoned off to accommodate the line. So they're definitely rolling out the carpet today for all of the people that are excited about the new technology. And they're limited by the fire code. So they said that the technology can handle big crowds, but you can only get about 100 people in there at a time, and that includes their staff. So you figure maybe about 80, 85 customers at a time in there. Inside the store, they do have a number of employees, mostly preparing sandwiches and salads and that prepared fresh food for takeout. Then they also have people who are constantly stocking and replenishing the shelves, as well as they have a small beer and wine section, and they have to have a person there monitoring to make sure anyone getting beer and wine is of legal age.
So this is the first store. How quickly do we expect Amazon to roll these out?
I'm sorry, I broke up a little bit on me there.
How quickly do you expect Amazon to roll out more stores?
Okay, well, they haven't broadcast anything. They've said that they're going to focus on this store for now, and they've been in beta testing for more than a year, having it employee only. But that said, they have hired and listed job openings for people specifically for Amazon Go, things like site selection managers and construction managers. So we can definitely expect them to bring this to other markets as long as they're happy with what they're seeing here in Seattle. Similar to what they did with their bookstores, which they started in Seattle, and they've now got about a dozen or so around the country.
How much do you think these Amazon Go stores could disrupt the brick and mortar convenience store industry?
Well, the convenience store industry is very fragmented, and you mentioned earlier the $550 billion industry. More than half of that is gasoline sales, so they're not selling gasoline here, but still, more than $200 billion, I should say, in food and moving toward fresh food. And so they're definitely looking for a market for the on-the-go person looking for a quick bite to eat. It's really like a mini Whole Foods inside. And the opportunity there is largely for Amazon with their brick and mortar strategy. Their e-commerce operation is very distant from its customers. They have warehouses around the country, but generally they're far flung. You don't see them. You don't even know how something gets to your door. Amazon is trying to get closer to customers, and there's nothing closer to customers than convenience stores. They're everywhere.
Well, French President Emmanuel Macron has long been calling for Paris to be an innovation hub, and Facebook and Google are working to fulfill that desire. Google says it will create an AI lab dedicated to fundamental research on the topic. The company wants the group to be close in size to its team of 120 applied research engineers already in Paris. And Facebook says it will double its AI lab staff there to 100 by 2022. That includes $12 million in hardware spending. Meantime, Intel reported earnings this week, the first set of earnings since the Spectre and Meltdown chip flaws were revealed. Our Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, took a look at the company's response to the problems and the curious timing of a stock sale.
CES 2018, the biggest party of the year for technology, and among the keynotes, Intel's CEO Brian Krzanich showing off a kitchen sink of tech from VR.
We place multiple cameras around the perimeter of a playing field.
To pilotless helicopters.
Let's let it fly.
To a legion of drones.
You just witnessed the world's first 100-drone indoor flight show without GPS.
To, why not, an NFL quarterback.
The real Tony Romo. Hey, Tony.
But amidst the hype, there was an elephant in the room. The flaws in Intel's chip designs. Flaws known as Spectre and Meltdown. They allow hackers to steal data from computers running on Intel CPUs. How many computers? Well, Intel makes 90% of the world's computer processors and 99% of the server chips that power the internet. This flaw effectively puts every PC, smartphone, and server in the world at risk. Krzanich tried to soothe the concerns.
As of now, we have not received any information that these exploits have been used to obtain customer data.
Not yet, but hackers have proven themselves to be persistent. The patch for the flaw is flawed itself. It can slow chip speed up to 30%. It hasn't helped the stock performance, but the bigger question, will this security threat threaten Intel's sales? The company still struggles to crack the smartphone market, and companies like Amazon, Apple, and Google are all working on their own chips. And to make matters worse, in the 6 months since Intel was stealthily trying to work on a fix for the flaw, Krzanich sold $24 million in Intel shares. Now, the company says it's a routine sale, but that hasn't stopped U.S. lawmakers from demanding that the DOJ and the SEC investigate. Now, the last time Intel had to fix a big chip problem like this was the 1994 Pentium recall. That cost Intel $475 million. That kind of problem might not fly with investors.
That was Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson. Coming up, Nest co-founder Tony Fadell. We will hear from the former Apple and Alphabet exec as he voices his concerns over tech addiction in children. What one of the original iPhone creators has to say next. And a reminder, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg.
In San Francisco, a lot of tech action today.
Our top stories this morning in D.C. and
the Dow and the S&P.
Shall we? So the euro on a 7-day
sizable moves in the currency market. Temperatures down 0.5%.
We begin in the oil patch. Saudi Arabia.
Brent crude pretty much unchanged.
Welcome to Bloomberg, the first word Asia.
The U.S. and Japan duke it out over exchange. China's slumping onshore bond market is great.
Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. The topic of tech addiction is grabbing the attention of parents, teachers, and even tech giants. This includes consumer hardware veteran Tony Fadell. Serious concerns continue to circle the tech industry about being addicted to your iPhone, smartphone, or being absorbed by social media. We sat down with the former Apple and Alphabet exec and asked Fidel, who also co-founded Nest, how he's handling this issue as one of the creators of the original iPhone.
I look at it this as a whole set of unintended consequences that allowed kids and adults, this is not just a kids thing, it's adults, to be on them all the time if they so choose. And so what we do is we have things like tech-free Sundays where the family is off of electronics, including the parents, and we do other things together. Not that tech's bad, but there's times when we should just be face-to-face and talking about things and doing things together without screens sometimes coming between us. So we do that. We have screen time limits. It's difficult because we don't have many controls today to do that. And we also look at our behaviors with screens at night. Are the screens in the kids' rooms or not? Are the screens in the parents' rooms or not? These kinds of things to understand that moderating use of these devices.
What do you think the actual impact is on adults and, even more importantly, on children?
Well, I really look at this as I'm not a researcher. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not looking at it as the addiction per se. I have seen stories, and I have friends who've had kids with addiction issues, as well as adults with digital addiction issues. But I really look at this as, we need to have tools and data, information to allow us to understand how we consume digital media. And if we look at this and draw the parallels with something like food. Think about food. Today we have scales so we can measure our weight. We have nutritional information on the side of boxes and different foods so we know what's in there. We have programs to allow us to control our eating habits. We have definitions for words like what's a protein, right? So what's a protein in a digital world, right? Is a protein a digital educational app? Or is a sugar a social mobile app? Is something like water like like the camera app? These are the kind of things where we need to build nomenclatures around these kinds of habits and start to talk about them instead of just saying it's addiction or not. It's lots of usage or not. We need to get finer grained language and start to understand that the iPhone is just a refrigerator. It isn't the addiction. It delivers food, and we can then choose to pick what we want, what's a protein, what's a fat, from that refrigerator, and then hopefully consume it in the right portions. And then we have a scale to measure ourselves for seeing how much we've consumed each day or each week.
The business models of these companies are predicated on how long we use their products. I mean, do you think Facebook should be telling us how long we've been using Facebook? Should Apple be telling us how long we've been using the iPhone?
Well, first, I think not all of the business models are based on how much screen time you have, right? So some are and some aren't. You have to look at the individual business and figure out what their key metrics are for how they drive their revenue. So I know back in the day when I was at Apple, that was not a revenue driver, was how much screen time people were using, right? And so for Apple, it's more about selling more devices. So if you think about it, I think that users will buy more devices if they have the information and control over those devices. I know a lot of parents consider, should I buy them a cell phone or not, or a smartphone or not? Should I buy them a tablet or not? They would buy multiple devices for themselves, for their family, if they knew they could control them. Today, they're wary because they're like, oh, I have to collect all these devices before they go to bed. I have to set controls on all of them. These controls become cumbersome, extra devices become cumbersome, and I think that's limiting the business potential for a device manufacturer like Apple.
What about Facebook, where the business literally is the more you use Facebook, the more ads we can show you, the more money we make?
Well, I think about Facebook. First, my kids are under 11. They do not have Facebook accounts. They don't have any kind of social mobile accounts. Not allowed. Our family doesn't use them. But at the end of the day, you need to look at the contents of social mobile apps. What is a protein? I think there's a great protein inside of Facebook where you can connect with your family and friends and share stories. Is there a nicotine or sugar component here where there's stories and other ads and other things to distract you, right? So I think we need to look at each app and think about its benefits and its distractions. If you think about it, I get all kinds of different emails to get me to re-engage with certain apps. Or notifications like, hey, did you see so-and-so posted on this? Those are interruptions. Those are kind of like, dopamine hits to get you to use that app more. This isn't something that Apple did. This is something that social mobile apps want you to engage with. It also happens with YouTube. It also happens with games with in-app purchases, or these games that need you to stay around a long time to use them. Or where there's advertising-driven models. So we have to look at each app and understand what is good about it, what's not good about it, where's their interruptions, and then be able to then assess for ourselves which apps we should put on our phones or our tablets, as well as onto our kids.
Have you ever had any personal moments of guilt, like a Frankenstein-type moment, where you say to yourself, oh my goodness, what have we built?
Well, I think, at the end of the day, you look around and you go, my God, the massive amount of the population, over half the world, I think now, has a smartphone. And you go, you're in awe of that. And I think that's great. But there are unintended consequences that come with these kinds of things, and we just need to work on them. If we look at it, there were app stores, and we have great app stores today. And when you look at the app stores, there's certain things that are inside of an app store, especially the Apple App Store, and certain things that aren't. There aren't gambling applications. There are kinds of applications where you can get addicted to, losing your money. But we also have to think about that in terms of what, like I said, these social mobile applications or some of these other ones that have different non-beneficial customer metrics for their revenue. So yes, I always worry about how to improve the technology, and in this case, we have unintended consequences. These are easy problems for the platform companies like Apple and Google to solve. This is not like self-driving cars. This is 10,000 times easier to implement and cheaper. But it can give lots of control and instill consumer loyalty and trust in the brands for their families and for themselves if they can get information and control over their digital consumption.
So give me some specifics. What do you think Apple and Google should be doing?
So, well, specifically, I think that the first thing is they already have all the information across all the devices that you use. So you can have a iPhone, an iPad, an Apple TV, a Mac laptop, and between all of those things, they know how much we're using, how much we're emailing, texting, browsing, these kinds of things. They can easily give us back a calendar of events, just like they do on the Apple Watch for how many steps, how well we sleep, how our heart rate's doing. They can do the same thing and give us our digital information and metrics about our day in a life of the digital world. So it should be a combination in a calendar showing our history of physical use, as well as a physical use of our body, as well as digital use of our devices. And so we can just see how much we're using these devices and then moderate our behavior, saying, oh, that seems like we're doing too much. Or in my case, I'm not using my French language app enough to learn French. So I would love to be able to set goals and set controls on this data to allow me to specifically control how I use these devices. I'd like also a way to set my device so when I'm listening to music, I'm not interrupted being buzzed or another notification coming in. I just want to enjoy my music without interruption like I did in the old days with an iPod. Or when I'm reading, I don't want to be disturbed. But today we have all these different notifications coming in, all these different interruptions. I would like a single purpose device sometimes. Well, we get all these notifications. Right when I get it, I would like to say, never give me this notification ever again. And when that happens across all of the platforms, so that I don't have to get disturbed about it and I don't have to go to every single device to turn off these notifications.
You're not just anyone, Tony. You could probably get Tim Cook on the phone in 10 minutes. Have you told this to him directly?
I've told it to multiple people inside of Apple, and I look forward to talking to Tim about it as well. And so, I'm looking forward to that conversation.
That was Nest founder Tony Fadell. Coming up, more from Bloomberg's coverage at the World Economic Forum in Davos. We talk to the CEOs of Morgan Stanley and the NASDAQ on the future of cryptocurrencies. This is Bloomberg. Stripe Stripe is getting out of the Bitcoin business. The online payments company says it will stop processing Bitcoin transactions on April 23rd. The company says Bitcoin has become less useful, explaining that transaction confirmation times and fees have risen for the cryptocurrency. Meantime, Morgan Stanley CEO James Gorman says Bitcoin isn't going away, but he does have some reservations about the frenzy over the cryptocurrency. Gorman spoke to our Bloomberg editor-in-chief, John Micklethwait, at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
I think, Bitcoin is not going away. It's not a fad, but the aggregate market cap, if you will, of Bitcoin globally is less, I think, than twice the value of Morgan Stanley today. So in terms of...
So they could buy you, a majority stake.
I was making a slightly different
Yes.
point. Listen, we think we're an important institution, but we don't deserve the kind of press that a Bitcoin is getting every day. And Bitcoin is punching above its weight. It's speculative. It's fulfilling a need apparently at the moment, but it's not something which is fundamentally changing the global landscape. And for the average investor, no, I would advise them not to be investing in those kinds of speculative instruments.
Another big theme, which you've talked about a bit, is automation. There's a lot of evidence, trading desks, all these things people are beginning to ask about. Do you think in wealth management and investment banking you're relatively safe from that, or which way do you see that going?
Well, just to the core question of automation and other related topics, I was asked by a journalist recently about how much I focus on our competitors, and I said, obviously you're in the same industry, you have some focus, but it's not what we get out of bed worrying about. And he said, what do you worry about? I said, I worry about AI, I worry about automation, I worry about cyber risk, I worry about digital. All of these new technologies that are coming to the market at the same time are transforming the way business is getting done. So we try and look at each of our businesses, and back to your core question, with M&A, high-priced, highly complex global transactions, it's very hard to automate that. It's very hard to build an expert system about how to advise a board. Obviously, the electronic trading in equities has long been going on, and increasingly in fixed income. With wealth management, the evolution of the digital space is not new. Yep. Since Schwab, Ameritrade, E-Trade, these firms have been around. They've been providing effectively digital transaction and advice for 2.5 decades. But it's going to continue to cause firms like ours to provide both human capability and best-in-class technical capability.
NASDAQ CEO Adena Friedman also joined Bloomberg from Davos and talked to Bloomberg's editor-at-large Eric Schatzker about the company working on cryptocurrency futures. Take a listen.
We have been working with the industry and with a great partner to look at whether or not it's the right thing for us to do.
Is it?
And I think that we're still evaluating that. We've been talking with the industry to say, is this something, you already have 2 Bitcoin futures out there, so is there something different, a different construct, which we have come up with? Would that be of interest to you? Would there be demand? So the first thing is, if you're going to create a product, you want to know that people are going to use it and use it differently than how it's being used today. And the second thing is we'd have to self-certify as a futures exchange for this, and we would use our NFX license to do that. But we have to make sure from a risk management perspective we are fully prepared. And those are the 2 things that we're still working on.
Any preliminary conclusions? I mean, does it seem on the face of it appealing? Regardless of what you think about crypto as a medium of exchange or a store of value?
Well, I would say that our view is that digital currencies and cryptocurrencies will have a role in the global economy. The question is, will they mature to a state that really is used for the transfer of goods? But in the meantime, I think that there's certainly a lot of demand out there for that indicative price and that ability to trade it. It's just a matter of, can we create a construct that's unique enough and different from what's already there?
Would you think about providing or building a futures contract for something other than Bitcoin, say Ether or Ripple?
Well, in fact, we have 2 exchange-traded notes that are listed in our Nordic markets that have been done through another partnership. And one is an Ethereum ETN, and the other is a Bitcoin ETN. So we would look more holistically at cryptocurrencies and not just at one.
That was Adena Friedman, NASDAQ CEO in Davos. Bill Gates, co-founder of Microsoft and co-chairman of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, says President Trump's America First agenda could damage the U.S.'s long-term influence in Africa. Gates spoke with our Bloomberg editor-in-chief, John Micklethwait, in Davos. They talked about his foundation's efforts in Africa and their fight against malaria.
There's a tendency for several things to happen unless you stay committed to these things. One is that you get drug resistance, either the insecticide on the bed nets, and we have drug resistance to that now, so we are working with the private sector to get innovation there. The drugs themselves, we use these artemisinin combinations. In Southeast Asia, we have resistance there. And then just the energy people put into these programs. One of the great ironies is that as you get malaria cases down, then a government will tend to move on and focus on something else, and so you'll see a rebound. So the last 3 years, because a lot of the bed nets have been wearing out, we haven't refreshed them as quick as we should. The last 3 years, we actually have had the number of cases stay flat. And in a few countries, including Nigeria, the cases have gone up. You always have a little bit of some variation in terms of the weather. The wet season is when the mosquitoes proliferate in an exponential way. But the community needs to get its act together, and having showpiece things where we really learn, like this Central America thing, is a key part of that.
Do you think the Chinese are really this time looking at doing works which are kind of pro bono as opposed to building things where there's a much more straightforward commercial advantage to them?
I think as they're becoming richer, as they're seeing a strong role in the world, China has a conference with the African leaders on a regular basis called FOCAC that I'll attend later this year. Compared to the U.S. in history and today, Chinese aid is very, very small, and the African countries appreciate, particularly in HIV and malaria, where under President Bush, the U.S. made these big increases. They totally appreciate that we've done that, and I think we really can afford to keep doing it. It's a very small part of the budget, and I don't think going to them and saying, hey, we need to increase AIDS or malaria deaths because we're so short of something really is the best idea.
There's obviously a social good there, but there's also this question of soft power, whether America now is prepared to commit itself to those things. Is that something that you worry about, especially with the current administration?
Yeah, the balance of hard power versus soft power, the U.S. uniquely has the ratio emphasizing hard power, and I'd hate to see it shift even further. And as part of these budget discussions, the question of, do you grow the State Department at the same time you're growing the pure defense budget? Even the Secretary of Defense has been eloquent that you don't want to give up your soft power tools, and it's all being debated.
You follow a lot of history. Isn't this arguably the first case of a global hegemon sort of willingly giving away that hegemonic power by not investing in soft power? Normally what happens is the hegemon gets pushed out and all this soft power goes too. In this case, America is actually pulling back from helping the rest of the world, surely.
Well, I wouldn't say it's unique. The U.S. has often had this debate. Our relationship with the United Nations has had its ups and downs under different administrations, and keeping some pressure on the UN to be efficient and reasonable is not a crazy thing. How far do you go? It's all to do with the specifics. In the case of health, the lives are being saved for very small amounts of money, and you can aim to both lift the country up so it's self-sufficient and get rid of the disease. And so it's not a commitment that you're stuck with forever. So I think these ones, even in this atmosphere, make the cut.
Do you think George W. Bush, in a strange way, never got the credit he deserved for trying to save lives in Africa in the way he did?
No, he didn't, because Africa is less visible. Not as many people go there. His PEPFAR initiative, which was HIV-focused, and his President Malaria initiative, those were fantastic things. And I do think in some circles he does get credit for those things, but probably not as much as he deserves.
One last thing, President Trump, famously, all these countries, he's described them in a not terribly nice phrase. Do you think he should concentrate more on the poor of the world?
Well, I think he should. That's the area where I've chosen to take the wealth that was created through Microsoft and that Warren Buffett has been so generous in providing. And so, I understand that money can be very, very well spent. And so, I'm in there saying, come on, let's keep up the good work.
That was Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates with our Bloomberg editor-in-chief, John Micklethwaite, in Davos. Coming up, Taiwan is trying to make sure its plethora of scooters will be eco-friendly. We'll look at one company's mission to go gas-free on two wheels next. This is Bloomberg. Tencent is investing in a French retailer to help it challenge Alibaba. Tencent and local retailer Yonghui have signed a term sheet for a stake in Carrefour SA's China unit. This investment could help revive the struggling French retailer's hypermarket business in China. The deal would give Yonghui and Carrefour 800-plus stores, second only to Alibaba-backed SunArt. It would also further expand Tencent's WeChat mobile payments across the country. Well, Taiwanese electric scooter maker GoGo Road wants to make sure its vehicles don't add smog to the country's air. It plans to launch a trial of its swappable battery bikes in Japan later this year. Our chief North Asia correspondent Stephen Engel takes a look at how this tech upstart, backed by former U.S. Vice President Al Gore, is disrupting a gas-entrenched market.
Locals call this the scooter waterfall, a daily torrent in Taipei of Taiwan's nearly 14 million motorized two-wheelers, a noisy and noxious, albeit necessary mode of transport. But here's the thing, Taiwan is banning fossil fuel engines in such vehicles by 2035. Sure, that's a long ways out, but startup GoGo Road is getting a pretty big head start. Founded by the former innovation chief at smartphone maker HTC, GoGo Road is called by some the Tesla of scooters. Stylish, cloud-connected, and juiced by Panasonic swappable batteries.
For about 10 years, the Taiwan government has been pushing for electric scooter. To turn this very dirty mode of transportation to cleaner transportation. But throughout the 10 years, it was extremely unsuccessful until we came along.
The GoGo Road 2 has the equivalent of a 125cc engine, and they say I can go 0 to 50 kilometers an hour in just 4.5 seconds. Let's give it a go. Top speed is 100 kilometers per hour with a 110 kilometer range. When the batteries are zapped, just swap them out at one of 500 battery kiosks. 30,000 batteries are exchanged every day.
What changed the game ultimately was the way that we fuel the vehicle. Pop it in, within 6 seconds, evaluate whether or not there's anything wrong with the vehicle. It syncs with the server, talks to the server, programs a new battery. 6 seconds, not minutes, not hours, 6 seconds.
Another green tech company not wasting time turning the status quo on its head is MiniWiz. Profitable now for the past 4 years, it turns Taiwan's abundance of manufacturing waste into, at last count, some 1,200 recycled materials, whether it's window shades made of discarded circuit boards or terrazzo tiles from Nike shoes and apparel.
What drives us is anger, actually. With all this new intelligence, all this AI, all this new software that we can play with, I feel like there's not as many people as doing what we can do for the environment.
Both MiniWiz and GoGo Road simply want to get toxicity out of our increasingly crowded cities.
Stephen Engel there from Taipei. And that does it for this edition of the Best of Bloomberg Technology. We'll bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in each day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Technology are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology weekdays. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.